Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Tech Tips with Mogo Interactive and Mogo Arts Marketing. My name is Ben, I'll be your host today, and today I'm going to show you how to block your internal traffic in Google Analytics. So before we get into the actual configuration in Google Analytics, let's cover some of the reasons why you're going to want to block your internal traffic. Well, quite frankly, your employees, I guarantee you, do not behave like normal site visitors. So if you're doing any sort of analysis in Google Analytics, which you should be, you installed it on your site, you need to use it to get value out of it. It's going to skew things like conversion rates, attribution, referral sources, the pages they visit, and you know, the items that they interacted with on the website. And ultimately, if you are analyzing that data and your employees are getting kind of caught within that data net, unfortunately, you're probably going to arrive at the wrong conclusions and possibly make incorrect or miscalculated business decisions because of this skewed data. Another thing that you're going to want to consider is if you work or you outsource IT or web development, or maybe you work with a vendor that is constantly visiting your site, you may want to block those traffic sources as well. I would say anytime you're working with web dev or IT, you definitely want to block those IPs or ISPs as well. So there's two ways you can block traffic in Google Analytics. Well, there's actually more, but these are by far and away the most common configurations that people use to block traffic. The first one is IP addresses. So we can block one IP address, we can block two or more IP addresses, or we can block an entire range of IP addresses. I'm gonna show you how to do all of those and create those filters in Google Analytics today. You can also block by ISP domain. Now keep in mind, it's typically larger Fortune 1000 universities. Larger companies tend to have their own web servers. If you're outsourcing your IT to like a 20-person shop, they probably don't have their own web server, so that's just something you'll want to keep in mind. All right, so why don't we start out with the basic implementation, and we'll assume that you only need to block a single IP. This is really easy to do. In all honesty, all of these are really easy to do as long as you just follow the steps. So why don't we jump into it? So the first thing you're going to need to do when you're logged into Google Analytics, go into the view that you want to apply the filter to, and you're going to click the admin panel, and on the far right column, you're going to go to filters that we can see here, and you're going to create a new filter. And why don't I walk you through the filter setup, and then we'll actually open Google Analytics up and we'll create one. So you're going to add a filter name, and of course you're going to create a new filter, and the filter type will be predefined in this instance. And you're going to select Exclude, traffic from the IP addresses that are equal to, and because we're using an equal to operator here, we're just going to enter the one IP address as it is. And of course, I'm assuming that you know what that IP address is. So why don't we go and do this? Now, the one thing that I always like to do is paste these type of things into a text editor. It ensures that you're not dealing with hidden characters and stuff like that. It may look like everything is right, but when you deal with a text editor, it ensures that the values that you want to place in there are actually correct. So there's my IP that I want to create a filter with. And we'll go through some of these other ones as well. We'll go over to Google Analytics. So I'm in my admin panel, and we'll click filters, and we're going to add a new filter. And so for this one, I'm just going to say single IP filter, but you'd want to add something in there a bit more descriptive, maybe blocking internal traffic or something like that. Now, when we get into the multiple IP addresses, you may have different offices or locations with different IPs, and it may make sense, even though you can aggregate those into a single filter, to split them up so you know exactly which IPs and IP ranges apply to a specific location. If for whatever reason you needed to change that, you would already kind of have that organized in a way that makes it really easy to identify in Google Analytics. All right, back to our configuration. So create new filter, single IP filter. It's going to be predefined. It's going to be an exclude. Don't select include. We're going to traffic from IP addresses, and we're going to do that are equal to. In theory, you could do a contain, but you know, if somebody came from an IP address that was very similar to this, and that string was contained in there, you could block them as well. So you really want to go with an equal here. And we will set it up. Super easy. There it is. So this IP is now applied to this view, and it will begin filtering out traffic from that IP that we entered. Well, a lot of you need to block multiple IP addresses. Maybe you need to block 2. Maybe you need to block 6. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. It's a bit more complex, but not really. It's just slightly different. We're going to start using regular expressions. And regular expressions is it's a data manipulation. It can language. It can manipulate strings, values, things like that. And so this may look a little bit complex, what we're doing here, but I'm going to break it down for you. It's really not that complex. So in this situation, we assume that we have 2 IPs that we need to block here. Here's the first one, and here's the second one. And the way this is translated in regular expressions, which we can use in Google Analytics, which is really nice, it's translated as this. And let me explain this to you. The pipe character represents an OR. So right now we have 2 different IP addresses, and we see the pipe separates them. So we're saying block this traffic or this traffic. Now we could add a third one in there, add a new pipe, add the IP, and we would be good to go. Now the other thing that you'll notice is that we have these backslashes. It's not a forward slash, it is a backslash. And the reason that we have to use the backslash in this instance is because we're using regular expressions. And the dot or the period is actually a character that can be used in regular expressions to manipulate data. And so the backslash is an escape. So anytime that you're dealing with multiple IP addresses, you're going to need to put these backslashes in front of all these dots. So let me just show you how we would do this. So here are 2 IP addresses, right? So I'm going to take these 2 guys, just paste them down here. We'll add our pipe between them. And then I'm just going to go through, and before every dot, I'm going to do a backslash. 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 There's another dot. You don't want to do that, right? And that would be good to go. So let's assume that you have a third one. You can simply just append on here. We'll add another pipe. And let's just say this range is, I don't know, it's 62. And we just need to add our backslashes. And I'm going to give it a quick read through just to make sure everything looks right in here, which it does. I'm going to copy that. We'll go over to Google Analytics, and let's add one for multiple. So create new filter, multiple IP range. Oh, no, we're not doing a range. We're doing multiple IP addresses. We're going to do ranges in 1 second. This time it's going to be custom. Remember, when we're dealing with one, it's predefined, but when we're dealing with multiple or a range, we're going to use the custom solution. And we're going to look for IP addresses. There it is. Here's our filter pattern. Oh, I'm not sure what happened to it. Add my filter pattern. And you don't need to worry about any of this other stuff. You're basically good to go. And we will hit save. And there it is. Great. All right, so next let's talk about blocking a range of IP addresses. So this is something that larger companies often have to deal with that have a lot of employees. And in this instance, we need to block a range. You'll notice that the first 8 numbers in here of the IP address are actually identical, and then the last 2 to 3 are actually different. So we need to block the range of 90 to 174. You can imagine if you tried to go in there and use the pipe symbol on everything, that would be rather tedious. There's a much easier way using regular expressions, and I'm gonna show you this free tool that you can use to actually generate the regex code that you need to enter into Google Analytics. So for this particular range, I took these two IP addresses. I went to this website, analyticsmarket.com/free tool/IP regex. And I simply just added these in there, and it spits this back out to me. And we plug that back into the filter pattern. You'll notice that aside from this code down here, it's very similar to multiply IP addresses. It's a custom filter type, again using exclude and IP addresses. So why don't we grab this, and I already have this website open. Oh, it looks like I already entered them too. I'll just re-enter it again so you can see the process. So that's our range that we need to enter in there. We hit generate. We get that. I'm going to go back to my text editor. Looks like I already copied it in there, but I'll just, oh, I grabbed the wrong thing. Let's try that one more time. Control C. Get rid of that. There it is. Sweet. And we'll just do IP range filter, custom, exclude, IP address, add our filter, don't select anything else down here, save. Super easy. All right. The last thing I'm going to show you how to do is to block by ISPs. As I was mentioning earlier, it's typically only larger organizations and businesses that tend to have their own ISP. 20-person companies typically don't have their own ISP. So, most Fortune 1000 companies, almost every university has their own ISP. So those are things that you can block here. It's actually more similar to the filter that we did for the single IP address. Notice that we are going to create a new filter. We're going to give it a name. It's predefined. It's not custom. Exclude, but this time we're going to do traffic from the ISP domain that contains, and you are going to want to refer to the website as the root domain. Don't put www in there or any subdomains or anything like that. So you wouldn't want to put www.outsourcedit.com, for instance. So let's go set this up. So this time we're going to say block ISP, and it's predefined, exclude, and we're going to do traffic from the ISP domain, and we're going to do a contains this time. And that's it. Very easy to do, just like everything else that we've done so far. Now, some things that you're going to want to keep in mind when you're dealing with filters is that they apply on a going forward basis. So they do not apply to your data retroactively. What does that mean? Well, that means if you look at your historical reports in terms of traffic, they're going to look the same as they did before you actually applied this. Now, filters usually take about 24 hours to apply in Google Analytics. So what I would recommend doing is going back in your GA. Maybe you can always come in a couple of days, but maybe a week, and you're going to want to see if, especially if you get a significant amount of traffic from your employees or vendors or whatever, you should, in theory, see a drop-off since we're now excluding that traffic on a going forward basis. You'd expect to see it, probably the day that you applied the filter, or perhaps the next day, depending on what time you applied that filter and when Google actually implemented it. There are more advanced ways that you can apply filters in Google Analytics to filter out traffic. We're not going to cover those. Those are a bit more advanced. The IP addresses and the ISPs are by far and away the most common configurations that we see to exclude internal traffic, as well as to exclude any vendor traffic as well. So we hope you enjoyed this edition of Tech Tips, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.